Okay. And so one thing I did realize earlier was that I never give an introduction of myself when I start the meetings, and I was like, oh, they might want to know actually who I am and why I'm here. So if you're not familiar, my name is Kaz O'Shea Marie. You can feel free to just call me Kaz, but I'm a speaker, content creator, writer, poet, artist, mom, advocate. I'm on the advisory council for the Brain Injury Association of America. And I sustained my brain injury in 2017. I was struck by a car traveling 48 miles per hour while crossing the street in downtown Phoenix. I sustained numerous injuries, and some of which resulted in long-term disabilities and conditions, to include the traumatic brain injury. But my healing journey and everything that I went through with lack of resources, lack of support, lack of information, that was all really the catalyst for why I became passionate about being an advocate and making sure that no other person who has sustained a brain injury goes through the same things that I went through and the same things that my family went through alongside with me. And so, hence the birth of Resilient Roots Support Group. So, I'll just give a brief little introduction of Resilient Roots as well, although it's probably information you may already have, but just in case you need a refresher. At Resilient Roots, you'll find discussions surrounding resources and support tailored to the unique experiences of parents with brain injuries, ranging from managing daily tasks and parenting responsibilities to coping with cognitive, emotional, and physical changes. Our community provides an opportunity to share stories, tips, and perhaps most importantly, encouragement. It's helping you to not only survive, but thrive against the complexities of parenthood and brain injury. Join us monthly for regular discussions, peer speakers, expert Q&A sessions, and good old-fashioned peer support meetings, all hosted in a respectful an encouraging environment. We've had guest speakers from the Advisory Council from the Brain Injury Association of America. We've had a community movie night, and we have a special event going on today for Poetry Month, all kinds of great things. So, yes, and I also have not really held hard and fast to the rule of it being for specifically just for parents with brain injuries. So if there's someone you know who you think would benefit from participating in the group, feel free to invite them to come as well. And so feel free to have your camera on or off. Feel free to come later to the meetings or leave early if you need to. Once again, we're just happy to have you here. And so there's no hard, fast rules about attendance or being there. We're just happy to have you here in the first place. And feel free to put your questions or comments in the chat, and I'll try to monitor those and respond accordingly. And also make sure that you check out the Resilient Roots YouTube page for all of the past interviews and webinars. And you can also see our last poetry event that took place previously. And we have another one coming up this Saturday, but I'll be sharing more information about that later on. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. Okay. So the first thing that we are going to do today, before we get into our discussion, is a fun little writing activity. And I want to just emphasize that first and foremost, you don't have to feel like you are a creative person or have any experience writing to participate in this. It always kind of bothers me when people say that they aren't creative, because I believe that every person is creative in their own way. They may not necessarily see it, it may not be in a conventional way, but I believe that everybody has creativity. And so for today's meeting, we're going to be using an object, any object that you have near you. It could be anything like a baseball, it could be the chair you're sitting in, it could be the shirt you're wearing. This is basically going to be a grounding, kind of mindfulness writing activity. And so that's another thing that's also really important for brain injury survivors or brain injury recovery, is that mindfulness aspect. So this really fun activity is going to kind of combine those two things. So we'll go ahead and get started by the next slide. So this is a texture and emotion free write. And so we're going to take about 3 minutes for this part. So just go ahead and find any kind of object that you want. Again, it could be even the chair you're sitting in, it could be the shirt you're wearing, anything. And so what you're going to do is to just gently hold the object, or touch it. If it's a plant or something like that, you may not want to, grasp it too tightly. I'm a plant mom, so I know sometimes you got to be a little careful with our plant babies. But so you're just going to notice how that object feels in your hand and what it's kind of bringing up in your body. And again, there's no hard, fast rules about this, just whatever comes up. You're just taking a moment to kind of mindfully notice what's coming up for you. How does it feel? How does it feel in your body? How does it feel in your hand? What's coming to your mind? So you're going to just let that texture kind of guide your thoughts or emotions. So we're going to take about 3 minutes for that. I'm going to set my timer because one of the results of the brain injury is that I'm very bad at keeping track of time. So I'm going to set the timer for 3 minutes and go ahead and just write whatever comes to your mind. I'm actually going to spend about 5 minutes on this portion. And you can choose to write whatever just comes to mind, or you can also choose to use one of the prompts we have for examples here. For example, the texture of this feels like if this texture had a memory. Right now, I feel like this reminds me of things of that nature. You could also perhaps try describing it without actually saying what it is. That's another option. And feel free to write by hand, type, use your voice to text, whatever is most accessible for you. There are no rules regarding spelling, grammar, structure. You can just even write, just describe it with words. It doesn't have to be a written poem. Just going to write whatever comes to your mind that you're observing in this moment. I have about a minute and a half left. Okay, awesome. I hope everyone enjoyed that little mindfulness portion. And so right now we're going to just take a little bit of time if you feel comfortable. Again, you don't have to, but if anyone would like to share what they wrote with the group, feel free to take yourself off mute and share what you have written down.
I'm having technical difficulties, old lady syndrome with IT. I'm willing to wait if anybody else wants to go before me.
Nope, go ahead. You're first.
Okay, I will jump right in. So I had two things right in front of me. Like first I was looking around and well, my first thought was I wanted to do the brain. But I was like, no, that might be a little too easy for me. So I wanted something that would challenge me. So I had two things beside me. And the first thing was, I don't know if you could see this, is a roll of tape. And the
Mhm.
other thing was a butter knife because I was opening packages earlier.
Mhm.
So I went with the butter knife. And so what I wrote when I was just doing free association with words is cool, smooth, hard, sturdy, ridges but not sharp, warming in my hand, and that it will cut. That as I held it, it was beginning to warm up. And so then I was like, okay, well, let me go to the questions. So if this item, if this, instead of saying texture, I said, if this item had a memory, I would say its memory of itself would be strong and underestimated. I said the texture feels both unyielding on one end, because you can always bend one end,
Mhm.
um, but unyielding on one end and flexible on the other end. And then the word stubborn came to mind. And then I said, this reminds me of me. And then the next thing you had was right now I feel like a butter knife. Ridges, ineffectual for certain jobs like cutting steak, but very effectual in its lane. And those are all the thoughts that I had about a butter knife.
That's very cool. That's excellent. Thank you for sharing. I love those observations, how you took it from the physical into more of the feeling of it and what the physical part kind of represented. So I love that.
Yeah,
Thank
it had me cracking up as things were coming because of your questions. I
you.
was cracking up. I was like, kind of seems like me. I don't, but anyway,
Well, you're not ineffectual. Let me just put that out there now.
well,
You're
thank you for
ineffective.
that.
Would anyone else like to share what they wrote down? Okay, I see that Nate has shared something in the chat. He says, I touched a pillow. I feel the plushness of it. I think of comfort and sleep. It reminds me of being comfortable and at peace. Oh, I like that.
Nice.
Nice.
Mhm.
Yes. Again, I love that mindfulness portion. You really went into it, not just talking about what it physically looks like, but the feelings that it evokes for you as well. Very cool. Would anyone else like to share what they came up with? I'll share mine. I wrote about this is not sure how well you can see it, but it's like a little pottery, like a little vase that I got in Homer with my family actually one summer in Alaska. I have it holding my pins. And so I decided to just write like a quick little poem about it, kind of with observations, but this is what I wrote. Smooth, bumpy, reliable. You come from gray sand and chilly air, waves of blue and white, ever present, cool to the touch. What secrets do you hold? Whose hands formed your grooves? And where do you go from here? That's it. So, before we get into our main discussion for this evening, which is going to be all about creativity and brain injury, was there anything that when you did this activity, was there anything that kind of surprised you about the process of doing this writing exercise? Anything that came up that was you weren't expecting? Oh, okay, before we go through that, Jillian shared, I touched a little guy toy. It reminds me of a little snowman. It makes me smile. Oh, I like that. Very nice.
Mhm. I do too.
Hmm.
Uh, I it just what surprised me about it was that I really expected to describe the experiences of a butter knife. I didn't expect it to come back on me.
Mm.
That surprised me.
Hmm. Sorry, I'm trying to turn off the screen sharing. Again, this is like my not biggest, what do you call it, tech person here. Okay, did the screen stop sharing?
No, because we see additional information
Oh,
uh, page.
okay, hold on. We'll get it together just a second. I don't have my IT brother person here to help me stop with the sharing. So let me see here.
It's
Um,
at the top somewhere, isn't it?
I thought so, but I don't see it. My screen.
Ah, there you go.
Okay, perfect. All right. Sorry about that. I will edit that part out when I put this online. Actually, probably not. I'll just leave it. I don't care.
Mhm, mhm.
It's real. Okay, so do you feel any different now after having done this little mindfulness free write exercise than you did perhaps when you started it? You feel more present, anything like that?
I feel more present and more connected.
Mm.
That'd be the best way I could describe it.
Hmm. Awesome. Yes. And again, for living with a brain injury, or really any, I would say, disability or chronic condition, that mindfulness portion is really important. I may be a little biased because I'm a former yoga and meditation instructor, but it's really important, I feel like, to kind of, get out of whatever we may be, experiencing, thinking about the future, that we are just getting back into the present moment and noticing what's going on in the present moment, but noticing it without judgment. That's one of the biggest parts of mindfulness is that you're not necessarily attaching any kind of feeling or emotion to it, but you're just noticing what's going on and not judging yourself one way or the other for whatever you might be experiencing in that moment. And that's a really important part of the brain injury recovery process. And I see Jillian has also shared with us in the chat that she feels happy and connected. Oh, excellent. So glad that you are experiencing that as a result of the mindfulness exercise. So we're going to get right into our discussion now. And again, this is going to be all about creativity. This is National Poetry Month, and poetry, the arts, painting, any sort of creative outlet is also a really great tool if you are living with a disability or chronic condition, specifically brain injury. There are ways to make it accessible for you. So I'm really excited to get into this discussion with you all and hear your thoughts on creativity and brain injury. So, just to start out, simple basic question. What does creative expression mean to you? And has that changed at all for you since sustaining your brain injury? What are your thoughts on that? What does creative expression mean to you? Feel free to take yourself off mute and share whatever comes to your mind.
For me, not having curious enough, looking at everything that's come forward since you started your advocacy, I realized that at some point I did sustain a brain injury, and it was back in the day. I'm not sure if you guys were born yet. Um, I don't know. I think you were. I can't remember. And I was going into a building and stepped up on the curb and slipped and hit my head on the corner of one of those big metal utility boxes. You guys know about it, family knows about it. And everything from seeing stars, everything but the birds tweeting around my head, blood gushing everywhere. And so I never thought about that. But what I can say, so I can't really, since I was never diagnosed, I can only do it from the perspective of a caregiver, that since your brain injury, creativity has become even more important to me as I see how you've had to use it sometime as the only way to express yourself, how you're feeling, what you're going through. Um, and even for you to be able to put into place and try to come to some understanding about what's going on in your brain and in your body. And for me it's become more important because words just cannot describe how you feel after someone that you love so dearly has gone through this. Words just, they sometimes you don't even want to use them because they hurt so much. And then when you do use words, you only want to use the minimal number of words to describe the experience. And that requires creativity, which is why I've liked that you're doing the your dad's passing through getting ready to go upstairs, which is why the poetry is really helpful because you kind of have to be present with whatever that emotion is that you're um, trying to convey in with those words.
Yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head. For me, that creative expression has been so important in that, as you mentioned, that a lot of times there were things that I was experiencing and continue to experience that I can't necessarily put words to. And so that creative expression has been a really helpful outlet for me to be able to share that. And that is exactly why I wanted to start the poetry series and upcoming workshop, which I'll be sharing about everyone in a little later in the meeting. But yeah, just to give other survivors that opportunity to be able to express some things that are sometimes difficult to make others understand, sometimes even ourselves. And Jillian has shared with us in the chat for me, my brain injury has affected my life, but creativity for me has connected who I am as a better sorry. Connected who I am as a better person. Excellent. Yes, that's really good. That is, yeah, that's another really important aspect, I think, of the creative expression, that it connects you back to yourself to get in touch with who you are. And that's one of the things that I've also been exploring through my work, but also just during this time period of my brain injury recovery, is kind of going back to figuring out who I was before any of the trauma happened. So something will happen and I'll literally be like, how would little Kaz O'Shea react to this? How would baby Kaz O'Shea react to this before anything, before the brain injury, before any other negative experiences or other people's opinions, you know? And so I think those creative outlets also can help you get back to the essence of who you are. So thank you for sharing that, Jillian. Okay, unless someone has something else to share about that question, we'll move on to the next one, which is, are there any creative outlets that you used to enjoy that you've reconnected with? It could be in recent times or just any time since your injury. Have there been any creative outlets that you used to enjoy that you've come back to in more recent times? And for me, I can say there's been two. And I feel like with brain injury, or again, any really chronic condition, or a disability, it can be really difficult sometimes regarding the creative expression because you may have the desire to do it, but your physical capacity just doesn't allow for it. And so I would say during the initial times, actually, after my accident, after I sustained the brain injury, I was told by my medical professionals to actually stop doing any kind of creative expression. They told me not to do my painting, even any kind of writing. It just aggravated my symptoms too much, so I wasn't able to do any of it, which kind of felt like, I will say, a death sentence because creative expression is always, my parents, my family can attest to this. Creative expression has always been a part of my life. I've always written, I've always painted, I've always drawn. And so not having the physical capacity to do that after sustaining my brain injury just felt like injury to insult. So, but in more recent times, I have been able to go back to it on a limited basis, figuring out ways to make it more accessible for me to be able to still do. So I'm writing poetry again, as well as painting. I'm starting a new series. Of paintings using recycled mirrors and African art to again kind of reconnect with community, culture, myself. all those kind of things. So that's been my experience. Does anyone else have something they'd like to share about reconnecting with their creative expression?
I'd just like to ask a question of if it's not too personal for Jillian, I'd like to share something. I don't know if you remember after the accident, and I don't really remember whether it was before the medical professionals told you don't do that anymore, don't do your artwork anymore. You actually said you felt like you would never do it again. You felt like you never would. You didn't want to. When you started, it made your brain hurt. And I didn't know if you remember that you yourself said you never wanted to or thought you would ever do it again. And that broke our heart. And so I wonder, one, for you to comment on that, but also if Jillian ever experienced that same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually had forgotten until you said that. Although it does sound like something I would have said at that time, because I think that was kind of my mentality about everything at the time, because things were so extreme and so I was just getting discouraging news after discouraging news from the medical professionals that yeah, it did feel like I was never going to do it again. And honestly, there was a part of me that kind of felt like I didn't want to do it ever again, just because it was something that I had always used to express what I was going through. What I was going through at that time was so terrible. I didn't want to have to deal with it in that way. I didn't want to, especially have it be put out in any way publicly for other people to see all of the trauma and negative feelings and things that I was experiencing at the time. So there was definitely that emotional aspect as well. But thank you for bringing that up because I didn't recall that that was something that I had said. And also, thank you for supporting me through that. I would not have been able to come through it. So, praise God for the caregivers also. And I see Jillian has shared with us in the chat. Creative outlets for me used to be walking and baking. Oh, very cool. I stopped walking because of my gait and baking because of brain fog. Now I'm back in walking. Oh, congratulations. That's awesome. Oh, so happy to hear that. It's such a big every milestone counts. Every milestone is a big deal and deserves to be celebrated. So I'm so happy to hear that you've been able to get back to some of those creative outlets that you previously enjoyed. Okay. Anyone have anything else to add to this question? Okay. We'll go on to the next one. So, what creative activities help you to process difficult emotions? And I will add one thing here too to this question that, again, I have a definitely a very much expanded view of what creativity is. It's not just painting, it's not just writing. It also includes, as Jillian mentioned, walking and baking. It includes any kind of physical movement, decorating, fashion. All of those can be creative outlets. Really, anything that you're putting your energy into that is, making your brain think in a different kind of way. I consider all of that to be creativity. So keep that in mind as you're thinking of answering this question. What kind of creative activities help you to process your emotions? Oh, I see Nate has shared in the chat playing video games and making my action figures. Oh, yes, his action figures are very cool. I also enjoy doing weightlifting. I find that any excuse helps take my mind off of negative emotions. Excellent. Yes, that's very good. Thank you for sharing that. Those are all great creative ways of dealing with your emotions. And Jillian has shared with us walking, baking, reading, and swimming at my pool. Oh, that's awesome. I actually am not a swimmer. I want to, I want to learn how to do that, get my skills up in that. It's an important skill. And so good for you. It was actually something one of my physical therapists had mentioned doing pool therapy for the effects of the accident, but yes, I haven't done that yet, but excellent. Those are all really great creative expressions. Anyone else? What kind of creativity? Oh, I see Robert has shared in our chat also reading my graphic novels, occasionally working out as I can. Oh, yes, those are both great ones too. I recently just read a graphic novel from my parents, actually. It was a little triggering about the godmother of Harlem, but it was really good. That's another really great way of um, processing your emotions, dealing with your emotions creatively. Anyone else like to share on this topic? What kind of creative expressions do you use to process emotions?
This kind of goes back to what you said, the previous question. have we reconnected with anything? And I used to be an avid crocheter. I loved to crochet. Um, and I really just, I'd gotten away from it. After your accident, I started doing it and it was helpful, but I found that I didn't finish any projects.
Mm,
Um, unless I was doing something really quick, like if I would hear you say, "Oh, I wish I had coasters." All right, well, I can do coasters. That's quick. But I really haven't finished anything. But just recently, like just last week and this week, I started crocheting again, and I realized I needed to do two things with it. I used to create designs rather than follow patterns. And so I knew I had to do something that was an original design, but I also knew it had to be quick because I know me. And um, right now, I can't, because of the shoulder surgery, I can't really focus for a long time on things. And so I started doing these quick mini um, crocheted plant hangers. I was like, what are they? Plant hangers. And I really, I don't even know where that came from, but it really excited something in me. Um, and I remembered that I think it made me sad because it's what I used to get through the time after your accident. Because I had to focus on something else. And it was the only way I could quiet the sad in my brain.
mhm.
And so now I'm on the other side of it because now I'm trying to keep up with you. Um, so yeah, the that would be the crocheting that I'm surprised I picked up again.
Mm-hmm. That's excellent. I'm so glad you're able to get back into it because I remember being younger and seeing all the crazy amazing things that you would create, and I just that's kind of one of my probably earliest childhood memories was seeing you sitting there. I remember it was almost constant that I recall you every day spending some time crocheting, and I still have the coasters actually of course that you made during that time, and it's yes, a great memory for me, and now it's going to be an even better memory because I can see that it's something that you were able to connect back to, so that makes me happy also. Oh, and I see Robert also shared in, Robert is my dad. Robert shared that he also tries to do crossword puzzles. Well, that's really good. So that's creative and also working your brain, which is very important. Excellent. These are all really excellent ways of using creative expression to process your emotions. Thank you all so much for sharing those. And so our next question is going to be, do you ever use creativity to communicate when words are hard to find? And for me, that's definitely a yes, but I'll let someone else share first before I just jump right in. Okay, or I'll just jump right in. So for me, growing up, I was extremely shy. My family can tell you I'm not so much shy now, still kind of an introvert, but I wouldn't describe myself as shy now during this time. And so I would definitely say that even before I sustained my brain injury, creative outlets, specifically painting and art, I would say were definitely a way for me to communicate things that I was experiencing or things that I wanted to be able to say, but just didn't feel like I could. And so that became even more so a thing after sustaining the brain injury because I do feel that sometimes I just can't find the words necessarily to articulate what it is that I'm going through or what it is that I'm trying to convey. Um, and so I would definitely say that art and the creative expressions have been a way for me to be able to um, communicate and say things when I do find it difficult to find the words. And Jillian has also shared with us in the chat that yes, she does use creativity when words are hard to find. It's an excellent tool to be able to do that. And I think even for people who don't have a brain injury necessarily, I think sometimes it can be difficult to put into words maybe what you're trying to get across. And so sometimes being able to evoke those feelings or those thoughts through creative expressions can be a very helpful tool, even if you don't have a brain injury. But would anyone else like to share their thoughts on that?
It's just been interesting watching how your art has evolved. And I feel like yes and no. I use creativity now. I think I use it less than I wish I did because it feels like things are trapped inside.
Mm,
But what every time I see what you begin to create, it's an interesting evolution to see past, present, and future. expressed in everything that you're doing now, whereas before it felt like it was a more present kind of art. And the proof of that is that when you created it, you were pretty much done with it. Just like I
I
have
was
so
wondering if
many.
you were going to mention that.
Yes, I am. I have so many rescued pieces that like one of the best ones, and I should just at some point go in there and put it on the everybody can see what you were going to paint over. But I find that you are less willing to destroy, which not destroy, but you have always been somebody who stayed in the present moment. Now I feel post brain injury as an advocate, you realize that you really have to be past, present, and future because of the not just to deal with your own, but to try to explain to people with brain injuries, people always think, oh, this is the way you've been all your life. And it's not. They don't understand what people with TBIs have got to overcome. And sometimes creative expression that shows something unexpected coming from somebody who has a TBI makes people around you go, oh, wait, that person is still in there. Two, they don't want to stay like they are. And three, what's my role in helping them get someplace else? So that's what I think creativity and art does for someone with a brain injury or any kind of trauma.
Mm-hmm. That's excellent. That was really well articulated, and that is funny. That's funny that you did mention that. Yes, I will bust myself out here that in the past, when I would create something, whether I wrote it, but paintings especially, yeah, unless one of my family members rescued it, I would generally just throw it away because I was like, okay, it's out of me now. I can just toss it. I'm over it. We're done with that. But I really like how you articulated, Mom, that it is important to still have that record and that show that progress and that process, and even for people who maybe would look back at things that I previously did and be like, oh, okay, so that's where I'm at now, and then seeing something I did now and seeing, okay, so this is what the future might possibly look like for me. So that is important. So I no longer throw things away generally. But Nate has shared with us in the chat that I think it gives an outlet to be able to create what is inside of their minds. Yes, that's exactly, you hit the nail right on the head. It's putting what's in our brains out, you know, outside of ourselves, which can be really difficult to do if you have a brain injury, being able to articulate that and bring that to fruition. And for me also, this is kind of like a side note, but um, going into the um, creative forms of expressions post brain injury has also been really good for me to kind of again along those lines of the mindfulness to be able to let go of my perfectionist expectations of what it was supposed to look like or what it was supposed to go like. I call myself a recovering perfectionist because it was very much an addiction and something that I have to constantly manage. But, now, like for instance, when I'm painting, my hands shake. And so, I can't necessarily make it look like exactly like what I was thinking of, but it was also um, a really important exercise in being able to recognize that just because it's not the way that I imagined it, that doesn't mean that it's not still good and valuable. So I think that's another reason why creative expression can be so great for individuals living with brain injuries, kind of relinquishing that control, but still recognizing that whatever does come about is still good and still valuable and can still be enjoyed, even if it's not to whatever your original expectations were. So, our next question, this one's going to be specifically for parenting, or even if you're not a parent, you can answer it in terms of doing it with other people. But how do you incorporate creativity into your parenting? Is that something that you share with your kids, with your family, with people around you, or is it more of a solitary thing for you? But how do you incorporate creativity into your parenting?
It was one of the most important things raising you guys. It really was. It was just because that we always wanted you to be able to trust your inner voice and your inner spirit. And the best way to do that is through creativity, and just making something that in your brain come out of your brain. And I think that that being a norm in our family as you grew up, I feel probably has a lot to do with you being able to use that as an outlet now. And just with you, your brother, and your grandson, we always wanted to model, yes, we wanted to model the science of creativity's effect on your life.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's excellent. That's exactly. I'm very grateful for having grown up with such an emphasis on creativity and expressions. I know not everyone had that, which is also why I, again, am passionate about making that accessible for others, because I do think it makes a huge difference in who you become as a person, your ability to express yourself, to be able to find your voice, to trust your voice. And I would say that's something I also did really strive to do with my son, Nate, who's on the line also. To make sure that he was really fully immersed in the arts and creativity. Again, I think being involved in creative outlets really can help also kind of build your resilience and build your bravery even in being able to express yourself just freely, and not be concerned about what other people may perceive about it or perceive about you even, but to have those outlets, just to be able to emphasize and reinforce having your voice and speaking what's inside of you, because the world does need that. It's not just for you to be able to get that out there, but other people need to be able to hear that and have that perspective as well. So I think it is very important to incorporate that into, raising your children. And Jillian has shared with us in the chat, I incorporate creativity with my brother and sister. Oh, that's excellent. I love that family affair aspect. So that's wonderful. That's so great that you guys do that together as a family, that you have that support and that togetherness. That's amazing. And then Robert has shared in the chat, I shared reading, and all of you guys love reading. Yes, that may be the understatement of the century. Even the classics. I used to write, and Ebbets, that's my brother, his nickname for my brother, writes and reads a lot of the books I used to read. And side note, he's also actually become an author now. So the creative outlet has continued. And he says that we took you guys to museums and you love museums. Yes, very true. I took you to ballet and learned to love Poe and his writings. Yes, all the above. That's very true. I am once again very grateful for my family, for my parents, for exposing us to the arts and to creativity. It's definitely allowed us to be who we are today, and I'm grateful for that, and grateful to be able to share that with others, to also encourage them to be able to find their voice and use their voice and use those creative outlets for themselves and getting what's inside of them out to the world. So, next question. Have you ever created something that helps you to better understand yourself? If you're comfortable sharing that. And it could be anything, maybe even how the process of creating something maybe helped you discover something about yourself. Did you discover while baking a cake that you actually don't really like following instructions? That's an observation too. Could be anything. I'll give you a moment because that is kind of a sort of a big question.
Would you mind repeating it, Pumpkin?
Oh, sure. The question is, have you ever created something that helped you better understand yourself? It could be anything.
Yes, years ago, years and years and years ago, when I thought I would be good at making clay figures, and I found out that I am horrible at it. And it was, I mean, I don't think I've ever been horrible at creating anything in my life. I always felt like there was something passable,
Mm.
but that taught me, um, I'm not sure what that taught me. Except that it taught me a lot about myself in the process of realizing this just was not something that I was just going to I was going to be able to create. And then I was okay with it. And someone, which I think is also really important when it comes to creativity, came alongside of me. The instructor came alongside of me. And while she too was surprised, she still helped me. She told me, but you're not going to give up. You're going to create something that you will feel good about. And
Mm,
I think that's what creativity should teach us about ourselves, is that regardless of post trauma, there's still something of value inside of us that we want to share with the world and that the world still needs.
mhm. Yes, that's really well said. Thank you for sharing that. One, I like that you kind of pointed out that it's just as much about the process as about what your end result is. So I think that's a really great observation, especially for us as brain injury survivors. And I love that you also mentioned about uh-oh, TBI moment. I just lost what I was going to say. It was a good thought. Whatever I was going to say that you said. It was excellent. Thank you for sharing that. Jillian has shared in the chat that she's created cupcakes to process herself. Oh, that's very cool. And Jillian, do you mind sharing? Of course, you don't have to if you don't want to, but did it teach you something about yourself, like physically, or more so emotionally? Like, did it teach you something about your brain injury and how it works, or?
It taught made me like more like physically
Mm.
about myself.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, that's really good. I'm so glad that you were able to come to that observation. That's another great thing that is possibly kind of overrated, or not overrated, not underrated. That's what I was looking for. My brain's getting tired now at this point. That's underrated about creative outlets is that, particularly for living with a brain injury or a chronic condition, it can teach you a lot about your physical capacity and ways of making things more accessible. So thank you for sharing that about the cupcakes. And I love cupcakes, so I especially love that. And Nate has shared in the chat, I made an action figure that broke. I realized that forcing pieces to work wouldn't work. So I should take my time and not force myself to do something creative that I dislike. Oh, that's a really good observation. Yes, and that's a really good life lesson also, not to try to force things that are just not working out and also that we dislike. I'm of the mind now, especially post accident, if I'm not enjoying it and it's not something that I really have to do, then I'm just not going to do it. Life is too short. I was nearly unalived, and so there's no reason to continue to do things that just are not working out for you. And so here I am giving you official permission that if something's not working out for you, you can tell people Kaz O'Shea said I can quit. So there you go. And Jillian has also shared with us in the chat that she found a recipe from Cake Boss. Oh, yeah, the show that she used to watch. That's a cool show. We love Food Network, HGTV, all of those things. Keeping in line with all the creative outlets, we love those kind of shows too. Excellent. These are all such great observations and such great advice that everyone is giving. So the next question for us is going to be, when you do create something, are you comfortable generally sharing that creative work with others? Why or why not? And as you probably have seen, as I mentioned before, being previously very shy and a bit of an introvert and just throwing away things that I didn't think were perfect or that I was done with. Yeah, I'm not always entirely comfortable sharing those things that I create with others. But does anyone else have any other thoughts about that? Do you feel comfortable, generally speaking, sharing the things that you create, or do you prefer to just keep them to yourself?
Often to make myself express my creativity, I have to do it for someone else.
Hmm.
And so that creates a dichotomy because I've got projects that I started for myself that are unfinished for decades. Um, but if I do it for someone else, I'm going to work on it because I have that element of perfectionism in me. I'm going to work on it until I feel comfortable sharing it. So I'm not sure if that completely answers the question. I would say most of the time, probably not. But if I do it for someone else, I'm going to work on it until it's something that's presentable, and then I feel comfortable.
Yeah, that's excellent sharing and observation. It takes a great deal of vulnerability to share those things that you've created, and I think especially post brain injury or again any kind of chronic condition or disability that you often already feel like you're in such a vulnerable state, so it can be that much more difficult to share those inner pieces of you that come out in the creative works. Jillian has shared with us in the chat, I feel comfortable sharing my thoughts and feelings. Oh, that's excellent. Good for you, Jillian. You're light years ahead of many of us. That's excellent. Good for you. Anyone else? Are you comfortable, generally speaking, sharing the things that you create, or do you prefer to just keep them private? Also, I see that's very cool that you went to Hoboken to meet Cake Boss and his family. We have some family in New Jersey, actually, and one of my really good friends from here in Arizona, she's originally from New Jersey also. That's awesome that you got to meet him in person. Okay. If there are no other thoughts on that one, we'll go on to our next question. This is the one I'm actually really excited about, and also the reason actually why I really wanted to record this session is because I really would love to hear everyone's thoughts on this. But what would a supportive creative space look like for you? And that can be anything. You can make it as abstract. You can talk about what emotionally you would like to see. You could talk about what physically you would like to see. But what would a supportive creative space look like for you personally?
Do you mean in my own personal space or in a public, what would a public creative space look like?
It could be either, whatever comes to your mind.
Uh, I would go with what would a public creative space look like? What would I want it to look like? I think everything that anyone does has an element of creativity. Math is creative, science is creative. And I would love to see, I know they have what do they call co-working spaces?
Mm,
But it would be nice to see the kind of public co-working creativity space where all forms of creativity have a place, an outlet, an appreciation, and people can interact from their perspective of creativity. Because I think of people with TBIs come from every walk of life, every walk of life. And so if you were really good at math before, it stands to reason that your mind is still going to think creatively that way, but you may not, people may remember what you were like before. And they may go, "Oh, well, you're not in there anymore or you're different." But I don't know how that could come to be, but a space to me the best form of a creative space would be a space where that's valued. And at the same time, someone who's really good at scientific creativity might value or teach or learn from someone whose mind doesn't work that way, whose mind works maybe with pottery or whatever. But it would be a space where all forms were valued and not, oh, if you paint, you can paint clay, whatever, that's all that's welcome here. Everything is creative. And different people have different depths and skills. They had them before the brain injury. So that's not going to go away afterwards. But just in general, for a creative space, I'd still like to see something like that, both for people with brain injuries and without.
That's excellent. I like that you touched on both the physical, like what would it practically, physically look like to include all of the different forms of creativity, because I absolutely agree with you that everything is creative and takes creativity to be able to do. But I also like that you touched on what that would look like, emotionally as well, kind of creating that supportive environment where everything and everyone's input and their forms of creativity would be valued as well. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And Jillian has shared with us in a creative space, art and baking is a creativity. Oh, that would be very cool to see that combined also in a creative space. Yes, I love that seeing all different types of creativity coming together. And again, kind of like as my mom had mentioned too, just that being around other people who have maybe a different form of creative outlet or expression can also be inspiring for you as well. And I think that sense of community is also really important, especially for us as brain injury survivors. So time flies when you are having fun and hearing excellent input from everyone. So this is going to be our last question for this evening. What advice would you give to someone who doesn't feel creative anymore?
I'd like to hear that from the perspective of uh, participants who have had a brain injury.
Hmm. So for me, what I would tell them is that, again, everything is creative. You don't have to necessarily have any kind of not you don't necessarily you don't have to have any kind of validation from anyone else for your creativity or the things that you create or are putting out there. And so the advice that I would give to someone would be to just do it. Just go for it. It's kind of simple and sounds, it could be definitely more difficult than it may seem to just say, okay, well, I'm just going to go for it. But I would say that that's what my advice would be. Perhaps trying a different form of creative outlet than you have previously done. If you were always a painter, try writing. There's tons of resources online to give you prompts for different things. Try a different activity and think about the things that inspire you. Taking a walk, your family, music, movies, anything. So I would say it's simple advice and can be easier said than done. But for someone that doesn't feel creative anymore, I would say just do it. And Jillian has shared in the chat with us that the advice she would give someone who wasn't creative anymore, you don't have to be perfect and just do it. Yep, you nailed it right on the head. You said it simpler than I did. So thank you for that, putting it simply. Yes, you don't have to be perfect. Just do it. That's excellent advice. Anyone else like to share?
Apologies for my late joining today. The inquiry is what do you do when you don't feel like being creative anymore, or you don't feel you're creative anymore?
Mhm.
I think for me, as I'm going through a pretty strong period of burnout right now myself, part of it is be kind to yourself and grant yourself the grace to take time to step away from those obligations for a while. If you keep trying to, obviously it's a little bit different if being a creative is like your career, but if you have the ability to take some time to step away as opposed to forcing yourself to just push through and create something that may not necessarily be the quality or the style that you want to make, it's good to take that time to rest and to take that break. And then when you go back to it, for me, I have always maintained having a project that I'm doing for the sake of my studio and then a project that I'm doing for the sake of myself. So I'll have a novel that I'm writing or a screenplay that I'm writing with the intent to sell it and to get it out to the public, but then I'll just have a project that I have absolutely no restrictions on that is just whatever I want to do and I'm just free to explore the fullness of that creative paradigm and that helps combat burnout for me. So those would be my pieces of advice.
Yes, those are both excellent. I like that idea of doing something that's just fun and just for yourself. It takes the pressure off of it and just allows you to kind of get into it and enjoy it without the any of the negativity that can be associated with that. So that's excellent advice. And I also love that you pointed out taking that rest and that step back. That's also very important. And again, bringing it back to the brain injury, working within our capacity and being okay with saying, okay, I'm going to take a break from this and step away. And then when I'm ready, physically, emotionally, I'll get back into it. So that's excellent advice. Thank you so much for sharing that. Anyone else, any thoughts on this, our final question? Okay, well, thank you all so much. This has been such an excellent session and discussion. I'm gonna share my screen again, um, and give a couple announcements. So here is the information on getting connected with Resilient Roots. Feel free to follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and X at Resilient Roots PWBI. That's where I primarily try to make sure that I get out all the announcements about meetings, our themes, and any upcoming events. You can also join us on Facebook at Resilient Roots PWBI. I tried to make it simple. Pretty much all the outlets are just Resilient Roots PWBI, including our website. So we would love to see you there, love to see you interacting with the community on those pages. And this Saturday, we are also having our second In Our Own Words virtual poetry event featuring brain injury survivors and caregivers. Excuse me, throat's dry. So that will be April 19th at 12 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And it's not too late if you know someone who may be interested in participating to please feel free and contact me at the email there on the screen if they're interested in presenting or if they're interested in attending. It's open to anyone, brain injury survivor or not, allies, advocates, everyone is welcome to attend. And then you guys are the first to hear about an upcoming poetry workshop that I'm going to be presenting in June. So you have some time to think about it, to prepare, put that on your schedule. It's going to be called Telling Our Truths, Reclaiming Our Power. And this one I'm opening up to anyone with any kind of disability or chronic condition, as well as caregivers. You don't have to specifically have a brain injury. So it's just going to be a really excellent session where we're going to be doing some group activities, some guided prompts, things like that to come together and help be able to kind of express some of those things that we are experiencing and to be able to share that with other people if we so desire. So that is going to be coming up in June. And you can email me for more information or visit the webpage there at the top for more information or to go ahead and register and get that on your calendar now. And again, no experience is necessary. You don't have to consider yourself to be a creative person. As I said already, you are already a creative person, so keep that in mind. And then another announcement, if you happen to be in the Ohio area in August, I'm going to be leading a session at the Kennedy Center's Leadership Exchange in Arts and Disability Conference on non-apparent disability and the arts. And so that's taking place in person in Ohio in August. So if you are in that area, I would love to see you there, and I'll be sharing more information about that on the social media pages. And as always, I like to end the session with a quote about the mind. And this one is from Jim Rohn, and it says, "You must learn a new way to think before you can master a new way to be." So that is our quote for this month. And we will see you same bat time, same bat channel next month, a third Thursday of the month, 5:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. So once again, thank you all so much for everything that you have shared and for being a part of the session. And I hope to see you Saturday, or if not Saturday, next month, or online on one of our groups. So take care and God bless, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you. Thank
Take
you,
care.
everyone.
God bless everyone. Thank you.